cross between a man and an alien with wings and red eyes. It scared me more than anything that I have ever seen in my life.
A family on a hike. Their kids stalked by the legendary Grassman.
The way that my kids acted, there's no doubt in my mind that they saw something big.
A young man in the woods, carjacked by a giant reptilian beast.
You could see it well enough in the moonlight to see that it was a humanoid type figure.
Some 400 miles across Appalachia sits Point Pleasant, West Virginia. A small town wedged into a spit of land where the Ohio and Kanawha rivers cross. On any given day, Main Street bears little evidence of Point Pleasant's dark secret. A town famous for its flying monster.
There were kids in cars with their parents who saw it. There were teenagers at a bonfire who saw it. There were hundreds of sightings.
We were just out playing in the woods at night, and it looked like a cross between a man and an alien with wings and red eyes. It scared me more than anything that I have ever seen in my life.
Growing up here in Point Pleasant, I've always heard about the Mothman. As you're growing up and people tell you stuff, you start to believe it, but you've always got that doubt in your mind until you go and experience it yourself.
It all began in the late 1960s with sightings of a Mothman monster. First, the location of the sightings. The TNT bunkers, a former bomb-making plant built during World War II.
We used to hang out and play at the TNT bunkers. That was the only thing to do around here, especially during the summer.
In the fall of 1967, high school kids sneaked off to the TNT bunkers for a good time. They encountered something else. Rumors about a Mothman spread quickly through the town.
They were really serious about it and really scared. They had to see something. They were too scared and too emotional not to have seen something. And then, of course, that was the talk of everywhere you went.
While the town was trading stories, one Point Pleasant girl came face to face with something she'll never forget.
I was an innocent teenager till I saw those red eyes. I've just never been the same since then.
Faye Laporte grew up in Point Pleasant, dirt poor and one of 14 kids. A family outing to check out the rumors at the TNT bunkers bonded them in a way they never expected.
We were driving down the drag strip to the TNT bunkers, and my brother kept looking over towards me. And then he turned back, and then he looked over at me again. I said, "Well, what are you looking at?" He said, "Well, don't look, but there's something there beside the car."
Don't look.
So I turned and looked. They told me not to.
Don't look.
And there it was, right beside the window, flying right beside the car.
What is that? Get out of here! No!
Everything was just haywire. And my two brothers back there bawling and screaming, carrying on, and my sister was back there hovering over them, kind of like hiding them. This was one time in our life that I can say we were scared.
Then the car came to a screeching halt. That's when they met Mothman.
And that thing jumped on the hood of the car and was just looking at me. We were just more or less immobilized. And the whole time, all you could focus on was its eyes, and they were just so red. It was just beyond any red you could ever find. But when it jumped up, that's when I saw it open up its wings just like an angel. They were that big. They looked like a bird's wings, and they just unfolded, and it just went over them bushes and into the night and was gone. We went back the next day because my brother wanted to go and find this thing, this creature, and it was blocked off by the military, and they wouldn't allow us in. He tried to go in, they wouldn't let him, and they got very strict and forceful. "We don't need your help, appreciate it." He said, "But just turn around, go and leave, and we'll take care of it."
Well, I know
And my brother just kept on. He said, "Well, I don't see why I can't go in there and help y'all find this, because I want to find it myself." "You're told to leave now, leave," right smartly. And I told my brother, I said, come on, Daddy Kills, find out we're back up here.
Back the vehicle up, let's go. Turn around, let's go.
Yes, there's something else out there. And I thoroughly believe that the government covered it up. And within 2 weeks, they left and said they had it and they took care of it. And nobody needed to worry anymore.
While the sightings of the Mothman started at the TNT bunkers, a few months later, he was seen on the Silver Bridge, a suspension trestle that links Point Pleasant to Ohio.
There was a stoplight right at the foot of the bridge. It was malfunctioned, and all of these cars piled up on the bridge, and one side of the bridge collapsed, and it dumped one half of the cars into the river, and then the bridge swung back, and the other side collapsed. When the cars were floating in the river, the bridge fell on top of them and crushed them all. It was over in minutes.
It began with a hairline crack in a single eye bar. In the end, 46 people lost their lives. The worst bridge collapse in U.S. history.
Friends and neighbors went down on that bridge. My little girl in my class, third grade class, went down on the bridge with her mother.
I don't really discuss the Silver Bridge. My family was on there. Devastated, completely changed me. After the bridge fell, everything was gloom, you know, and everybody here had somebody there on the bridge.
A lot of people say the Mothman was here to warn us about the bridge.
He was seen on the bridge a few days before it fell, but like a good omen. So he was big and ugly, people wouldn't cross it.
I don't know about anywhere else, but I do know that the paranormal people love to come here. They never leave disappointed.
Brett Kirby is one of those people. In the summer of 2009, he arrived to Point Pleasant for a visit, skeptical about the legends of the Mothman. When he left, he was a believer.
I can't explain what happened to me out there. It changed my life.
Point Pleasant, West Virginia, was the setting of a daytime date for Brett Kirby and Jennifer Jeffers. But just when they thought it was going to offer romance, they stumbled upon the Mothman.
He had never been to Point Pleasant, and so he came up here one day, and I took him a tour. It was really exciting, you know, that he came to see me. We went to a few different places around Point Pleasant, and then I told him, I was like, the TNT bunkers, I said, you know, they're out there, you know, and he said, well, what is it? And I was like, well, they're old military bunkers that they used to use, and, you know, they were built on the Indian burial ground.
She just told me that it's haunted and stuff like that. I thought, you know, it'd probably be kind of romantic and stuff. Maybe, you know, just me and her be out there together and see what goes on. We was always told about the monsters and the myths and stuff in the woods. But as I was growing up, I never did really believe in any of that stuff. I had to see something to believe it myself.
As Brett and Jennifer's date started to heat up, they decided to check out the TNT bunkers, the site of the original Mothman encounters.
The TNT bunkers were where people used to go party when we were younger and in school. Everybody always went out there, and you always heard the stories and stuff, and they always, you know, come back with, you know, we heard this or we heard that. But I thought it was just because they were drunk. I never really believed it.
We arrived at the bunkers. It was probably about 5:30, 6 o'clock. The weather was probably about 75, 80 degrees outside. We went through 3 of them, and on our way back, we stopped back to the second one. When I went back into it and stuff, it felt like it was probably about 10 degrees cooler than what the rest of the bunkers felt like. I did have like a real eerie feeling and stuff, and it was just, I felt like unease for some reason. I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't pinpoint why.
Wow, this place is pretty neat.
At that moment, there was no sound. The only sound was like him clicking the pictures. And then he had quit clicking the pictures, and we were standing there just listening.
Do you see anything? It's cold in here.
And all of a sudden, something like just like grabbed my leg real fast. You know, I can actually feel the fingers, you know, just something just clamp onto my back of my leg. Because when it grabbed me, I spun around and stuff and looked behind me as if it was an animal that was running around or something. It kind of creeped me out because I didn't know what was going on. And I told Jennifer, I go, something just grabbed my leg. And she goes, oh, no, it didn't. You're just trying to scare me and stuff. And I said, no, something grabbed my leg.
I was like, oh my gosh, there's something here. I said, I'm out of here. You know, I gotta go. I can't take this. I'm out of here. Because it scared me so bad.
After it happened, I flashed a couple quick pictures as if there was anything in there with us. Is that like a mouse or a squirrel or something? Just to explain what happened.
We were totally freaked out. It was just something that I had never expected, you know, to happen. We ran back to the car, and then we took off. We went back to his house, and we were looking at the pictures on the computer.
He caught my eye on one of them and stuff, and we went back to it. And the picture had to me, it looked like an apparition. It had like the torso and it looked like an arm coming off of it.
My heart just dropped because I was like, oh my gosh, there was something there. There is something there.
First seen that picture, it blew my mind. I had actual evidence on my camera that there was something in that bunker besides me and Jennifer at that time. I mean, it blew me away.
It turned me into a believer because, you know, I've always heard that there is demons that walk upon the earth, but I'd never, you know, really experienced it in myself until that moment.
After what happened to me, I know I encountered something strange. So that set me on the path to go find answers. I never believed in the Mothman until I came to Point Pleasant. And after the night I went to the bunkers, my life was never the same.
Some 40 years ago, a dark winged Mothman descended to Earth in Appalachia. Some were terrified. But in the wake of a horrific bridge collapse, the monster came to be seen as a messenger, a prophet to warn about imminent disaster. If a recent sighting is to be believed, the creature is still here.
It made us both believers of the spirits and what, you know, can happen that we never believed would. Because that's something that, you know, you'll never forget.
Salt Fork State Park, Ohio's largest recreational wilderness. While cities and suburbs cover much of the state, Salt Fork remains open, a fragment of backcountry, hidden away in eastern Ohio. Within these natural spaces, rumors persist about a legendary beast.
I'd always heard legends and stories of it, but we just always thought it was, you know, something to scare the kids.
Salt Fork is the ground zero of grassman sightings in the state of Ohio. If you look at the amount of sightings, it's outrageous with what we've got.
Every time I come to Salt Fork, something happens. It's unexplainable to me. At night, sometimes when I'm by the campfire, I hear them through the woods.
The legends date back to the mid-1800s. Newspapers include stories about giant wild men harassing families and their farms. January 1869, Gallia County, Ohio. A man and his daughter were returning home from town. The girl managed to save her father. Nearly 150 years later, the grassman's violent reputation is still discussed.
I think it could, you know, very well snap your back, snap your neck. I think the fact of something that large coming at you probably would give you a heart attack and you would die and hit the ground before it got to you.
In a lineup of the hairy ape men believed to exist, it's Bigfoot's shorter, stockier, angrier cousin.
His size is probably right around 6 to 7 feet, about 300 pounds, extremely aggressive.
Even more than the creature's description, it seems to differ from Bigfoot's solitary habits. Grassman has been seen traveling in groups, as many as 5 individuals, implying it's more social, cooperatively hunting deer and constructing crude dwellings. Their name may derive from large mysterious nests made of grass found in the region. Big nest, big beast.
I have heard grunts I've had sticks thrown at me. I've had rocks thrown at me. It's a very odd feeling that you have when you're here at this park. You know that there's something definitely here.
And that something would make itself known to the Eddy family. Their day hike through Salt Fork Park turned into a nightmare.
It's very terrifying knowing that the grass man was within 60 feet from my children.
It was scary. It was so terrifying. The scariest moment in my life.
Where's Jersey?
And scarier still, the Eddy's youngest one, little Jersey, was all alone with the beast. Some 90 miles south of Cleveland, Ohio, a secluded region of the state, the Sasquatch Triangle, home to the highest number of sightings of the grassman, a wild ape-man beast, known for an aggressive disposition.
They're extremely muscular. Their arms are very long. Legs are very long. I believe they can kill you if they want to.
Unfortunately, the Eddy family hadn't heard much about the grassman legends. The Eddys of Cambridge, Ohio, are a Midwestern minivan-driving American family. Melissa and her husband Bob have 4 children, ranging in age from 5 to 16.
My kids are good kids. They have good grades, straight A's. These are tough kids. They don't cry in the woods. Even if they would get lost, they would turn around, they would try to find their way out. They would keep walking for miles before they would even yell for help. That's how they've been brought up.
Recently, the Eddys decided to go out for a hike. Their plans took them to Salt Fork Park, Ohio's hotspot for grassman sightings.
Oh, it was a beautiful day. Sunny, warm. And we get there and go out and begin our hike on Morgan's Trail.
At just under a mile, with sloping hills and ravines, Morgan's Loop Trail is considered only a moderately difficult hike, good for families.
Be careful, guys. Slow down.
I don't think any of us have been on Morgan's Trail. It was new to us, so we just followed the path to see where it would lead.
All right, which way you guys want to go? Over there?
Be careful, guys. You don't know what's over there. They're in a hurry.
Yeah, they are.
Let's have some fun with them.
What do you want to do?
You want to sneak around and scare them?
I told my husband to go scare the kids, and so he took off.
Oh, my goodness.
Bob thought it was just going to be a funny little prank. He had no idea how real it would get. Emily, her brother Andrew, and little sister Jersey went off into the woods to play on their own.
Me and my oldest daughter, we continued on Morgan's Trail. We didn't pay attention because I was following the noise of my kids.
Where's Dad at?
After some time passed, Melissa began to feel uneasy.
My daughter kept saying, "Where's Dad at?" And I kind of got scared because I didn't know where my husband was. It was a hard trail to walk on, and I couldn't keep up with the kids. Finally, he caught up to us and told us we weren't on Morgan's Trail.
What happened to you guys? It's not even the main trail.
Where are the kids? I thought they were with you.
When the Eddys heard their children in the distance,
You hear that? Yes.
they thought they could relax.
We could still hear them giggling, running, throwing rocks and sticks and stuff.
Their kids were having a good time. Until they weren't. Suddenly, their daughter Emily burst out of the trees in a blind panic.
I should go home now.
Here comes Emily running, scurrying up the hill, crying and screaming. And she goes, "Mom, I want to go home and out." She wanted out of the woods. She wanted to go home.
Calm down. Tell me exactly what happened.
Emily was in hysterical tears and crying. You couldn't understand her. I told her to calm down, and she finally said there was something in the woods, something that peeked around the tree at me.
Me and my brother and sister went ahead, and then next thing you know, behind the tree there's a big black shadow, and it kind of leaned over, and it was really tall. It was one of those moments when you're so scared you just stand there. I was frozen. I was terrified it would like walk and throw something or do something to me. It was almost like a person, just really big and black.
Emily's brother Andrew was nearby when she screamed.
All of a sudden, she started freaking out and she says that she sees something. It was far away, there was not a lot of detail, but it was a large shadowy figure walking on two legs. I've never seen something that scary before in my life.
Andrew tore out after Emily. Unfortunately, that left their little sister Jersey all alone. Innocence came face to face with the monster.
We were just sitting there and playing around, and we just saw a big black shadow.
It's a parent's worst nightmare.
Where's Jersey? He's peeking behind the tree. I think I was looking at me. Couldn't see his eyes, but he's black.
In the nick of time, her brother returned.
When I saw Jersey crying, I grabbed her and ran up the hill.
You're okay.
The Eddy family were all safe.
Everybody back to the car. Now. Go.
While the Eddys quickly left for home, their encounter in Salt Fork Park wasn't so easily forgotten.
Something happened down there, and I didn't know what it was, and that was frightful for us.
What was the creature the children had seen? That question led the Eddys to contact Dave Nowakowski, a well-known Ohio grassman researcher.
We got a call about a family who's seen something here in the park at Salt Fork.
Nowakowski asked the Eddy family to meet him at Salt Fork the next day.
We heard our little one yelling. Oh my
We
God.
arrived on the scene. The family was shook up.
Down below? Okay.
I didn't want to go back down there because I was scared and just, that's where the shadow was.
The researchers asked Emily to retrace her steps through the woods.
Emily started talking. I had video rolling and just observed everything that was around me. They were alone by themselves, playing, away from their mom and dad. The grassman was behind the tree watching the kids. I think the kids saw that wild grassman. That grassman was watching those kids.
Where's he at here? A little higher?
Yeah, a little higher. A little bit higher.
No bear.
You said you saw a deer?
The Eddy children are only the latest to run for their lives from an encounter with a grassman. Since the 1970s, hundreds have reported seeing the mysterious beast. One man came under direct attack.
I was a goner. I knew that was it. I was finished.
Miles west of Salt Fork Park sits Zanesville, Ohio. Stories have long circulated about hairy monsters residing in the grass hills outside of town. They were the kind of stories that hunter and trapper Hawk Spearman never paid much attention to.
You know, I really didn't believe it myself. The grassman to me was a rumor. My fiance at that time told me she had an encounter with one when we first got together, and I laughed it off. I thought she was just yanking my chain.
Hawk's attitude would change after the couple moved to a house on the edge of the Woodbury Wildlife Area.
I was real crazy about it. It made me very nervous, but he talked me into moving out there.
I told her, you know, everything would be all right.
Things were great at first. After I got there, I loved it.
It really was a dream home for me and her.
With a move to the countryside, life for Hawk and Karen appeared full of opportunities. It was early spring. Hawk figured wild game would be starting to stir.
When I come through the grass, come up on the other side of the brush. That's when I seen a 6.5 to 7 foot tall creature. It had wide shoulders. It had massive, huge bowling pin like arms. Looked human, but covered in hair, like a Neanderthal in the face. The minute it did notice me, I knew that was it. I thought I was finished for sure. In front of my toes. I turned and I ran back down the hillside.
The grassman doesn't like it when we're poking, looking for him. He wants you to leave the area if he throws any rocks at you.
I don't think he'll kill right away. He'll throw sticks, he'll throw rocks, he'll grunt, maybe do a bluff charge. He'll do that first. but it'll get to the point he'll get physical. He may put his hands on you, knock you to the ground, he'll kill.
When he came back down, he had this ashen look on his face, and it took me about 3 days to get out of him what he'd seen. I could tell the way he told me about his sighting that he wasn't joking.
And that was only the beginning. The grassmen had tracked Hawk back home. Then one night, they were awakened by a terrifying sound.
There was a really loud racket out there. You could hear it hitting against the trailer.
The grassmen are very territorial and extremely aggressive. If they don't want you there, they're going to sit there and harass you till you leave.
It's gone now. Whoever it was.
The last straw was when we found a gash above the door, probably 8 feet off the ground. Looked like a claw mark tore through the trailer. And that was the last straw for me.
I knew then there was nothing that I could do to protect my family if I needed to. So I said it was time for us to go.
We packed up and we got out of there.
The grassman definitely terrified us. I'm stunned, to know that something like that actually exists.
Bishopville, South Carolina. A town that's nearly surrounded in swamps. More than a quarter of the county is underwater. Some 25 years ago, near the Scape Ore Swamp, a young man had a terrifying encounter. One that Bishopville residents are still talking about.
It's one of the most unique things I've ever seen. A lot of it just don't add up. You don't have the answer for it.
Scape Ore Swamp is definitely a place that could hide unusual creatures and unknown mysteries because it is vast and rugged and, off the beaten path of civilization.
You get down to the swamp itself, it's real thick. Something could live back there and never even be detected. The swamp holds a lot of secrets.
And in 1988, one scaly secret may have slipped free. The Lizard Man. It made its presence known in an extraordinary attack on a teenage boy, Christopher Davis. Davis has since passed away, but one man still struggles to make sense of what happened.
We received a complaint from a house in the Browntown section of Lee County. We dispatched 2 deputies out there to investigate the complaint. They called back and said, "Sheriff, you better come out here. We've never seen anything like this before."
Look at my car. Look who did this.
While parked outside the family's home, their vehicle had been damaged during the night.
It's strong, that's for sure.
Look how wide the claw marks are.
What we found appeared to be tracks all over the car, pretty good-sized tracks, and the fender was pulled out. Something had pulled the chrome strip off and chewed it up. Whatever it was real strong.
The Lizard Man was generally described as being 7 foot tall. It had a human-like shape. It was large, bulky, muscular. Typically was described as having 3 fingers. It had long black fingernails or claws. It walked upright. It did not have a tail.
We started asking people in the neighborhood, had they seen anything like what was described to us? One person said, "You mean that Lizard Man?"
Then, the case took an astonishing turn. A local teenager was fixing a flat tire near Scape Ore Swamp when he realized he wasn't alone.
You could see it well enough in the moonlight to see that it was a humanoid-type figure. And it was moving pretty quickly at him.
Bishopville, South Carolina. In the summer of 1988, Sheriff Liston Truesdale was investigating cases of property damage and assault by a most unlikely perpetrator. A lizard man, supposedly lurking near Scape Ore Swamp.
I'm gonna catch the biggest fish, boy. You don't even know, man.
We heard that it ran 2 fellas off the skateboard swamp. They saw it, and it was too much for them, and so they ran.
Then, 17-year-old Chris Davis came forward to report a terrifying tale.
This was July the 14th, 1988. Chris Davis and his dad came in.
Sheriff, this is my son, Chris. He has a story to tell you.
So you had an encounter with this creature. When Chris Davis's father saw this in the newspaper, he put 2 and 2 together and thought, well, maybe this is the creature that attacked my son.
Well, I was on my way home from work and...
The incident had occurred 2 weeks prior to the cases the sheriff was already investigating.
It was some kind of lizard man. And
I just couldn't believe what the fellow was telling me. This kid was a super good kid, and his parents is very reputable.
I tried to get in my car and drive off, but before I know it, the lizard's on top of the car.
We asked him, well, why didn't you report this? And he said, because everybody would think he was fooled. Nobody believed it and think he was crazy.
On June 30th, 1988, Chris Davis was on the late shift at a fast food burger joint on the edge of town. He finished up around 2 a.m., got into his car, and headed home.
He was coming home from work and had a flat tire. And he stopped a little dirt road to fix his flat tire.
That little dirt road was at the skateboard swamp, stuck in the middle of nowhere, without a soul for miles. Davis would have to fix the flat, or spend the night.
And he fixed his flat tire and was placing the tools back in the car. He saw something which he described as a tall creature, about 7 feet tall, with big red eyes.
He looks up and he sees something coming down through the tall grass. Of course, this kid is panicked. He takes off. He could see its hand hanging by the window, and he saw it had 3 fingers. It had long claws that he described having black fingernails.
Davis swerved wildly, trying to shake the monster from his car. The nightmare was over. Or so he thought.
It got up and started chasing him. He estimated that the thing was running at least 35 miles an hour as he sped off, and he could see it in the rearview mirror until it disappeared into the darkness.
He went home and drove up in the yard and jumped out of the car, crying, screaming, and yelling. And his parents said it took 2 hours to settle him down. That's how afraid he was.
His parents are trying to ask him what happens. He's explaining that he saw a 7-foot green, red-eyed devil, as he described it. And they saw the fear and the emotions in Chris's eyes.
Days after the encounter, Chris Davis drew a sketch of the creature.
It was a very crude drawing, but it basically showed a large humanoid-type creature that had 3 fingers and glowing eyes.
Chris Davis was a reluctant eyewitness. There was another, and after all these years, he's come forward as well. For as long as anyone can remember, pilot Frank Mitchell has crop dusted the fields around Bishopville. He's not a man given to exaggeration.
I don't drink, and everybody that knows me will tell you that they'll believe what I tell you. I don't have any reason to tell anything wrong.
Frank Mitchell's runway lines up directly over the skateboard swamp. One morning he was in mid-takeoff when a creature appeared on his flight path.
It was like any average day. The weather was perfect, and it was in the early morning. And there's a point that I call a point of no return. You're either going to lift off because you've already got your takeoff speed, or either you're going through them woods, you know. And so on this particular day, I was right at that point. or approaching that point. And this thing comes walking across the runway right in front of me. And I'm looking at the thing going 75, 80 miles an hour and got these woods staring me in the face, so I had to lift off.
For a split second, Mitchell was staring into the face of the lizard creature from the Skateboard Swamp.
It actually stopped and looked right at the airplane coming, and then turned its head and kept right on walking and walked right on across the runway. It was greenish brown in color. I couldn't tell if it was scales or if it was skin, and it had a face kind of like a monkey, but a longer face than a monkey. Not a long face like a horse, but a longer face than a monkey's got.
Airborne and out of view, Mitchell circled back to get a second look.
By the time I made the turn, the creature walked across the runway and into the woods, and I never did see it again. So I didn't tell anybody anything except my wife for a while. And then later, I told the sheriff, because the sheriff and I are good friends, and I told him, but at the same time, I asked him if he'd keep his mouth shut about it, because, like I said, I don't want my farming community to think I'd gone stupid, you know? And so that's the name of that thing. But then after some other people saw it, then I went ahead and I told him, I said, you can tell what I told you a long time ago.
Whatever it was, may still be out there.
Bishopville has a monster hanging around somewhere in this area. I used to like to get out and just walk and look at the stars. I don't walk the woods no more.